aliens and UFOs. In the previous video, we saw that as far back as the late 1930s, the media had already begun grooming masses for a coming alien invasion. We learned of dissenting theories that allege that a secret government rules the whole world, runs an international drug trade that releases viruses and deadly diseases as a population control scheme against the masses. In light of this, we saw how it is quite plausible what many ousted and discredited witnesses have been saying, that the US government has been working with other worldly creatures, and in its greed for power, supremacy, and control through technological advancements, it sold its own citizens to these creatures. John Lear called it the Grand Deception, how the US government was deceived into selling its own citizens to these beings for technological advancements, that by the way could not be used against these beings, and only EBEs could operate them. But we saw that the US government was not a passive victim in all this. It was not deceived far beyond what it agreed on. With immense enthusiasm, for decades, it has remained persistent in the covering up of its tracks regarding this treaty that it made with extraterrestrial intelligences. Many witnesses have lost their lives attempting to broadcast the truth to masses, including leaders such as former President John F. Kennedy and former US Secretary of State James Forrestal, who was the first abductee and one of the first casualties of this cover-up. Additionally, many have claimed that the US intelligence has worked closely with the film industry to groom the masses for a coming invasion from extraterrestrials. With movies such as E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they presented aliens as friendly, misunderstood creatures that love children, who are ugly on the outside, but warm, delicate, and in need of love on the inside, despite them having ironclad proof that they were dangerously hostile to humanity. Many of these films take the plot of good versus evil aliens. This plotline could also be traced to real-life experiences of the US intelligence team with these aliens. Mr. William Cooper wrote in his account, "In 1953, astronomers discovered large objects in space which were moving toward the Earth. It was first believed that they were asteroids. Later evidence proved that the objects could only be spaceships. Project Sigma intercepted alien radio communications. When the objects reached the Earth, they took up a very high geosynchronous orbit around the equator. There were several huge ships, and their actual intent was unknown. Project Sigma and a new project, Plato, through radio communications, using computer binary language, were able to arrange a landing that resulted in face-to-face contact with these alien beings from another planet. This landing took place in the desert. The movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is a fictionalized version of the actual events. Project Plato was tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with this race of space aliens. A hostage was left with us as a pledge that they would return and formalize a treaty. In the meantime, a race of humanoid aliens landed at Homestead Air Force Base in Florida and successfully communicated with the US government. This group warned us against the race orbiting the equator and offered to help us with our spiritual development. They demanded that we dismantle and destroy our nuclear weapons as the major condition. They refused to exchange technology, citing that we were spiritually unable to handle the technology we already possessed. With time, they have begun showing more daunting, perhaps more truthful depictions of these beings, and painting realistic scenarios of what such invasions will be like. Such an example is the sequel, A Quiet Place. Even President Reagan has alluded to this issue of invasion. In one of his speeches presented before the UN on 21st September 1987, he said, "Perhaps we need some outside, universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from the outside world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?" As far back as the 80s, it was said that hundreds of thousands of people had been abducted by these creatures and made into sleeper agents. That is, people assigned a task and a place to go for a coming big reveal that scientists, with their greatest expertise, have not been able to uncover. To many, the idea of otherworldly creatures is too far-fetched. Perhaps this is because we do not have any lived experiences that prove, or at least have us apprehensive of the fact that otherworldly creatures do exist. All throughout our lives, our greatest perceived threats have always been human, but this does not necessarily negate the possibility of otherworldly creatures existing in the same earth as us. Ancient books, for example, give multiple accounts of creatures that would be labeled quote-unquote mystical today. Genesis chapter 1 from verse 20 to 21. And Elohim said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open expanse of heaven. And Elohim created great dragons, and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Scriptures have told us of great dragons that inhabit the sea, that Yah himself created and were good in his sight. Leviathan, the monster that Yah described in the book of Job, is one such example. Behemoth is another. He is Leviathan's counterpart, whom the book of Enoch tells us inhabits the outskirts and waste spaces of the far deserts, while Leviathan lives in the deep waters. Even science confirms that we have no idea of the many creatures that inhabit the waters. About 60% of the ocean is cold, dark, and in the remotest corners of the earth, but these remote areas are some of the greatest habitats of all the earth. Enoch chapter 60 from verse 7. And on that day were two monsters parted, a female monster named Leviathan, to dwell in the abysses of the ocean over the fountains of the waters, but the male is named Behemoth, who occupied with his breast a waste wilderness named Duodain, on the east of the garden where the elect and the righteous dwell, where my grandfather was taken up. The book of Enoch and Noah also tell us of how giants, the Nephilim, which means the fallen, came about, and the details they give us corroborate the accounts of our scriptures given in the book of Genesis. Here's an excerpt from the book of Noah, from chapter 106, verse 1 to 7. And after some days my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore a son. And his body was white as snow, and as red as the blooming of a rose. And the hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun, and the whole house was very bright. And thereupon he rose in the hands of the midwife, opened his mouth, and conversed with the Lord, Adonai of righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid of him and fled, and came to his father Methuselah. And he said unto him, I have begotten a strange son, diverse from and unlike man, and resembling the sons of the God of heaven. And his nature is different, and he is not like us, and his eyes are as the rays of the sun, and his countenance is glorious. And it seems to me that he is not sprung from me, but from the angels, and I fear that in his days a wonder may be wrought on the earth. Enoch answered us so. And I, Enoch, answered and said unto him, Adonai will do a new thing on the earth, and this I have already seen in a vision, and make known to thee that in the generation of my father Jared, some of the angels have transgressed the word of Adonai. And behold, they commit sin, and transgress the law, and have united themselves with women, and commit sin with them, and have married some of them, and have begotten children by them. And they shall produce on earth giants not according to the spirit, but according to the flesh. And there shall be a great punishment on the earth, and the earth shall be cleansed from all impurity. Yes, there shall come a great destruction over the whole earth, and there shall be a deluge, and a great destruction for 1 year. And this son who has been born unto you shall be left on the earth, and his 3 children shall be saved with him. When all mankind that are on earth shall die, he and his sons shall be saved. The book of Enoch chapter 6 reads, And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Semyaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered and said to him, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, that is, mutual curses, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. From verse 7, And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood, and the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. In the book of Jasher, there are further accounts of these Nephilim hybrids that were begotten from the sin of these giants against the beasts. From chapter 36, verse 28 to 35. And the sons of Zibeon were Ajah and Anah. This was that Anah who found the Yamin in the wilderness when he fed the asses of Zibeon his father. And whilst he was feeding his father's asses, he led them to the wilderness at different times to feed them. And there was a day that he brought them to one of the deserts on the seashore, opposite the wilderness of the people. And whilst he was feeding them, behold, a very heavy storm came from the other side of the sea, and rested upon the asses that were feeding there, and they all stood still. And afterward, about 120 great and terrible animals came out from the wilderness at the other side of the sea, and they all came to the place where the asses were, and they placed themselves there. And those animals, from their middle downward, were in the shape of the children of men, and from their middle upward, some had the likeness of bears, and some the likeness of kephas, with tails behind them from between their shoulders reaching down to the earth, like the tails of Duchipath. And these animals came and mounted and rode upon these asses, and led them away, and they went away unto this day. And one of these animals approached Anah and smote him with his tail, and then fled from that place. And when he saw this work, he was exceedingly afraid of his life, and he fled and escaped to the city. And he related to his sons and brothers all that had happened to him. And many men went to seek the asses, but could not find them. And Anah and his brothers went no more to that place from that day following, for they were greatly afraid of their lives. These creatures, giants and Nephilims, existed even in the time of David and Samuel. 2 Samuel 23:20. And Benaiah son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. He went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in the time of snow. We see that the earth is vast with many waste spaces that have remained unoccupied by human beings, but are still habitats for many other creatures. With this in mind, the concept of aliens should not sound implausible, unconvincing, or difficult to believe. Aliens could simply constitute the vast number of creatures that have simultaneously existed with humanity without our awareness. This is William Cooper's account of how the treaty with the aliens turned out. By 1955, it became obvious that the aliens had deceived Eisenhower and had broken the treaty. Mutilated humans were being found along with mutilated animals across the United States. It was suspected that the aliens were not submitting a complete list of human contacts and abductees to the Majesty 12, and it was suspected that not all abductees had been returned. The Soviet Union was suspected of interacting with them, and this proved to be true. Remember, in the treaty US made with the aliens were not to offer any technological help to any other Earth nation, but they later admitted to collaborating with Russia and the Soviet Union. The aliens stated that they had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion. You must understand that this claim could also be a manipulation. After several Air Force engagements with alien craft, it also became apparent that our weapons were no match against them. Here, more information on these beings emerges. 1. That they manipulate masses. 2. That they are spiritual. They use dark forces to carry out their crafts, namely witchcraft, magic, occult practices, and religion and such like dark powers. 3. That they are expert deceivers. According to Lear, it was necessary that these forms come to the earth. He expressed that they can be contained for a time within an electromagnetic force field, but they do appear and disappear at will, even in containment. These life forms apparently are regressing, not progressing. He wrote, "The EBEs have a genetic disorder in that their digestive system is atrophied and not functional. Some speculate that they were involved in some type of accident or nuclear war, or possibly on the backside of an evolutionary genetic curve. In order to sustain themselves, they use an enzyme or hormone secretion obtained from the tissue they extract from humans and animals. Note that cows and humans are genetically similar. In the event of a national disaster, cow hemoglobin can be used by humans." These secretions obtained are then mixed with hydrogen peroxide and applied on the skin by spreading or dipping a part of their bodies in the solution. The body absorbs the solution, then excretes the waste back through the skin. William Cooper's account corroborates this finding. He wrote, "Another major finding was that the aliens were using humans and animals for a source of glandular secretions, enzymes, hormonal secretions, blood plasma, and possibly in genetic experiments. The aliens explained these actions as necessary to their survival. They stated that their genetic structure had deteriorated and that they were no longer able to reproduce. They stated that if they were unable to improve their genetic structure, their race would soon cease to exist." This could explain why, from the many testimonies of the abductees who recovered their memory through psychiatric help and hypnosis, it has been found that these beings are especially interested in human digestive and reproductive systems. The cattle mutilations that were prevalent through the period of 1973 to 1983 were for the collection of those tissues by the aliens. The mutilations included genitals taken, rectums cored out to the colon, eyes, tongue and throat all surgically removed with extreme precision.
But in northeastern Colorado, another favorite spot for the mutilators, Tex Graves, former sheriff of Logan County, insists the 93 mutilated carcasses he investigated were not natural deaths.
The very first one we had was southwest of Sterling. When we first looked at it, it was just unbelievable that you could take an animal and do this too without leaving some kind of track, some kind of evidence behind, such as cigarette butts, matches, handprints, footprints, but there was nothing. The animal looked almost horrible, and it was something that I didn't really want to believe then. And there was, we probably had 5 or 6 others before I really did believe something strange was going on. We had one up north where we believe the animal was paralyzed and was alive when it was being mutilated. An eye and an ear, the tongue, the rectal area was taken out, but the animal dug a hole with its head, but none of the other parts of the body moved, not even the legs. 6 north of town on a very hard pasture, almost like hard brick. We found tripod marks 12 inches across. The tripod marks were 14 feet apart. We found one set that had gone in the ground roughly 8 inches. And it would take a good post hole digger or our shovel to dig in like this. It indicated something very heavy had sat down in this area, yet there was no tracks leading from it nor to it. Almost nightly when this was going on, we could pick out a very brilliant, huge, brilliant light in the sky. We had a newsman take pictures of it with a very high-powered lens, but all we got out of this was the movement of it and the light showing very brilliant. Several times we observed those smaller lights come out of this aircraft and then come down toward Earth. This huge, brilliant light would hang in the air, and then when it would move, it could move up and down, backwards, forwards, travel very rapidly. And after a while, these smaller lights would join up with the larger one, and then they'd disappear.
This concept of abductions and bodies found without tongues, eyes and throats, cut-out genitals, especially the rectum and open intestines, is not new to Africans. It is a common phenomenon usually attributed to witchcraft practices, but perhaps there's more to that. Erika Mukisa, a former high-level sorcerer, now a minister of the good news, has told of a time when she was working for the Kingdom of Darkness when she met an alien named Cleo.
What you've been seeing Hollywood showing us of a spaceship and these green beings, gray beings, pale beings coming out of the spaceship is just to fool you, because you know what the enemy does. He plays with our subconscious mind. When he does that, he programs us unknowingly. What they are trying to do is to create a conducive environment for demons to coexist with human beings. So they'll keep showing it to you in movies, and you keep laughing about it, thinking that it is just entertainment, not knowing that actually these beings exist. And when they talk about the alien invasion, they lie to you that they are not with us, that they are planning to come, yet they are right here with us. They are in Africa, they are in Asia, and they are in Europe. Personally speaking, from an experience where I had an encounter with one of them, his name was Cleo. And Cleo was very good with computer. He was very good with chemistry, physics, and they oppose gravity. They do things that are like...
What does it mean to oppose gravity?
Let's say he can ascend, yet gravity says with the body you cannot just ascend.
He can fly.
He can fly, yes.
Without an airplane.
Yes, he can lift things without touching them. He can write on computer without typing. They do things. They have supernatural power. So this being called Cleo was working with some big telecom companies.
Wait a minute. Where did you meet him, and how
Yes,
what were the circumstances?
That's where I'm going. Yeah. So I met him after my baptism, my satanic baptism, through my grandmother, who was a high-level sorcerer. And my grandmother took me to a ceremony where they were congratulating all the people that have entered into the occult. So now I was taken to one room, and in that room, my grandmother, on our way, my grandmother started now briefing me. My grandmother said, I want you to meet somebody, but this person that you're going to meet is not like the people you met the other side.
Yes.
The other people you met the other side are like us. So the person you're going to meet on this side is not like us. Then I asked my grandmother, am I going to meet a ghost? Then my grandmother shut me up, said, what's wrong with you? Can't you tone down? Do you have to say everything? Can't you just know from within yourself? You have to shout.
She scolded you.
Yes. So she said, this person is not like us, but he lives with us. And there are many people like him that live among us, but people have not found out. What we are trying to do is to build a system, an environment that is conducive for both of us to coexist. As we are talking, there's a lady who came and then welcomed me and my mother. We entered through a corridor, and then they opened the door. When they opened the door, I saw this being. He was dressed like, you know how the Muslims, the Arabs,
yes,
they put on?
Like the Saudi crown prince.
Yes, and then he had something like a turban, right?
Yes.
Yes, and then he was sitting, but he's not looking like us. He's like, the color is like pale green, like army green, something like that. Yeah, so in the process of, looking at this person, I'm wondering, I had the door shut. Now, when the door was shut, my grandmother had sold me. She did not enter with me, but they just shut the door on me. So,
oh, you thought she was going to come in with you?
With me, yes. That's how the enemy functions. They have no friend, everybody on their own, and God for us all.
Right.
So I knelt down, because in our culture, kneeling down is a sign of respect. I didn't know now what to do. And I was crying. And he said, the voice which this being was using was like a computerized voice. Where he was sitting on a bed, I'm on a door, but there are two tables, and they have these desk computers, and then there are seats. So he walked from his bed, he's coming towards me, and then he turned to the table that had a computer. The desktops, leave alone these laptops.
Yeah.
By then there were those desktops. And then he said, stand up, just come. I'm not going to hurt you, something like that. Like, have you ever set a phone and then you see like 6 o'clock, time to wake up, things like that. Yeah,
yes.
Those two voices. So when I felt like, I'm not going to do anything to harm you, just come, I want to show you something. So I stood up, went slowly, I sat. But before sitting, I'm looking at him, said, oh, you're looking at my arms. I have 4 fingers, you have 5. We are different, but I'm not dangerous.
Right.
So it's like he was reading my mind, trying to see everything I look at. Oh, your skin is different from mine, because I I can survive in the waters and the space, but you can't. And I can also survive here. But my friends or my siblings cannot survive here like me, Sam. So everything I was looking at, he would provide an answer. The other thing I realized is he would stretch, like stand and then bend, like he was like boneless almost, very flexible.
Right.
And then he would not gravity would not work on him. He would oppose gravity. So he
What
said,
does his face look like?
Like the sunken eyes, the ears, like they are cut off. They are very small compared to the body. A head that is bigger than the size of the body. Yeah.
A big head.
Yes, that's bigger than the size of the body.
The eyes.
The eyes are a bit sunken, like they are not like ours. Like ours are out, theirs are a bit inside.
Inside
but round.
His head. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So
big.
Yes. So now, that's now when he starts training me. He says, now I'm your guiding spirit. You see, the people in the other kingdom, he never told me what kingdom, but he said the people...
He used the word kingdom.
Yes. The people in the other kingdom have a spirit that enables them to grow.
Right.
Now you need me to enable you to grow, and you will grow in knowledge. Your energy will grow. I'm not talking about the energy that we get in our body, but the spiritual energy.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was telling me that I'll grow in knowledge, I'll grow in understanding of the things of the kingdom of darkness, and my energies will also grow. So he explained to me that the people in the other kingdom have a spirit that enables them to grow So he is going to be my guiding spirit, and he will enable me to grow in wisdom, knowledge, and the things of the kingdom of darkness.
Right.
Yeah. So he told me that those people serve Elohim, but they don't know that Elohim is the reason as to why we are suffering, because he has not given them a place where they can stay, and survive.
Yes.
They are now roaming. They are wandering. They are wanderers. They operate both in space and in the water, in the marine kingdom. Yeah. So this story you hear of NASA and other people coming with stories like there is a planet where there are aliens and things of the kind.
Yes.
He told me that they are homeless. If they had a home, they would have settled. But Elohim took their home and he gave it to us. And he does not want us to share that home. And this is the planet. So the battle is for this planet. Us, we were given dominion on this planet. And Elohim just wants us to stay here. He used to refer to God as Elohim. So he told us now the battle is for the planet. The battle is for us to find a way where we can coexist. We can live with them. And Elohim cannot accept that we coexist. So what they are doing is to create an army to fight with Elohim.
I think that these are the beings, when God said, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue, and have dominion. In other words...
That's why you're hearing of birth control.
So Adam was supposed to grow the Garden of Eden until it filled the earth with children.
Yes.
And then subdue these beings that used to live here.
That's why they are scared of us multiplying. God told us to subdue, to multiply, and to have dominion. And that's why they are pushing for the LGBTQ XYZ agenda. The XYZ is also to favor the aliens that will come in, that want to marry our daughters and sons.
They're going to keep on adding to LGBT.
Yes.
And then add D for demon,
yes.
A for alien.
Yes. Told me that they are the ones who have given the superpower countries. That's why you see them trying to impose the demonic agendas on us. He has given them the knowledge to create those weapons of massive destruction.
Yes.
And then the knowledge to create viruses and bacteria that can kill in masses.
Yes.
When you have that, you become the boss over other people, because should they fail to side with you, you will take them down. That's why you see, when they want the resources and they cannot get them, they will cook up a story on a president. They say these people are creating these weapons and they are dangerous. Then they go kill them and steal their resources. And this Cleo told me that they collect data he's the one who trained them how to collect data, and then they use it as a government, but they also use it as aliens to study man. They want to know how man interacts, how man associates with his family, how man reacts when he's happy, how man reacts when he's sad, when they are announcing the death of somebody, how they talk, because it is in our words that there are energies. So they want to get our energies and study our energies. Remember, our words create. The power of our life and death is in the tongue.
Is in the tongue.
So they are so interested in our conversations. They are so interested in our data. So there's a country where every time, like every season, in a certain area, only women of a certain age bracket would die, and nobody knows who is killing them. And when they die and they get the bodies are having some missing organs.
Wow.
It's like someone just killed them and took some organs. The person who killed them is interested in the organs. And these people are not brought to book, and they are anonymous, and they are never found. It's because these aliens or these demons need people for specimen. Like, they need to research. That's why you see they are creating artificial wombs. How are they able to get a womb in which a baby survives on this planet? It's because they get these women who are in that bracket of giving birth. They take out their wombs, and then they go and make research on a woman's womb. And if they are pregnant, they make research. They use people, human beings, as specimens in their laboratories. So in exchange for power, that's why these presidents can stay in power for years.
Yes.
And nobody comes against them and dethrones them, unless God himself dethrones them.
So these are cases where human beings are disappearing.
Yes.
But their bodies are found later on.
Yes, and a certain
organs.
Category of human beings. So if you see that happening in your country, let's say in this district, it's women that are disappearing. Then after that scandal or after that saga, you go to another place, it's men in a certain age bracket that are disappearing. Then all those people are collected for experiments.
I find Erica's account quite credible. Much of what she says corroborates what other witnesses and researchers have revealed. She spoke of the telepathic abilities of these beings, and that they were making technological advancements on our side as well. She pointed out the telecommunications sector in particular, and that they speak our languages in computerized voices. One marker that I find interesting is that she mentioned that Cleo the alien was green in color. In John Lear's commentary, he said that he knew of 3 types of aliens roaming the earth as of the late 80s. There were the Greys, who were skinny, ugly, and of human height. There were the Nordics, who looked like Caucasian humans but were 7 feet tall with platinum blonde hair and blue eyes. And there were green aliens, but he said these were rare. The ones they often came across were the Greys. It appears that the Greys are more common in the Western Hemisphere, while the green should be common here on our side. Out of curiosity, I keyed in aliens in Kenya into AI software, and it brought me various pictures of green, lizard-looking like aliens. I thought this interesting and to be expected. Another point of interest is the origin story which Cleo gave. He claimed that the earth was initially their home, but at some point Elohim became angry with them, destroyed their home and scattered them from this dimension, and now they are homeless wanderers without a suitable environment to live in. Eerily, this matches what the scriptures say. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Ruach Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. It appears there was a violent altercation between verse 1 and verse 2, where Elohim destroyed the earth only to recreate it for a new race, the human race. Genesis chapter 1 from verse 27 to 28. So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. And Elohim blessed them. And Elohim said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. For Elohim to say replenish is quite significant. Replenish means to fill something up again, to do over, to restore to a former level or condition. Understanding that these beings are deceivers and manipulators, everything they say ought to be taken in strides and with careful consideration. I doubt that Yah created and gave them a place to live and then later on banished them. But it could be true that at one point, whether because Satan created them and filled them throughout the earth, for Satan is an ancient creature who has had plenty of time to carry out his wicked schemes, Yah for sure violently destroyed them and scattered them to a different dimension. This could also explain why they are a regressing civilization. Due to lack of an environment that sustains them, much of their physical being could be getting atrophied, not merely their digestive and reproductive organs. Humanity may be their last resort for source of food and for crossbreeding for the continuity of their civilization. Drawing parallels of this account and those of the researchers, I found that the researchers claim that these beings know of the Christ and his imminent return. John Lear stated that they said that they invented the Christ as a part of religious manipulation of the masses. William Cooper in his account notes that from the Navy files he accessed while he worked for the Navy, he read, "The aliens explained that they had created us through genetic manipulation in a laboratory. They stated that they had manipulated the human race through religion, satanism, witchcraft, magic, and the occult. This, the US team suspected, was part of their many manipulative schemes and deception. Upon further probing, however, they did admit that there is a Christ and that he would return." Here's more of what William wrote. On the suspicion that it was alien manipulation, an intelligence operation was put into motion to penetrate this matter. Searching through the Vatican archives, the US presented a prophecy to these aliens and asked if it were true. The prophecy stated that if man did not turn from evil and place himself at the feet of Christ, the planet would self-destruct, and the events described in the book of Revelation would indeed come to pass. The prophecy demanded that Russia be consecrated to the Sacred Heart. It stated that a child would be born who would unite the world with a plan for world peace and a false religion. The people would discern that he was evil and was indeed the Antichrist. World War III would begin in the Middle East with an invasion of Israel by a united Arab nation using conventional weapons, which would culminate in a nuclear holocaust. Most of the life on this planet would suffer horribly and die as a result. The return of the Christ would occur shortly after. When the aliens were confronted with this finding, they confirmed that it was true. The US, refusing to be manipulated, asked for proof that this would happen. The aliens then explained that they were capable of time travel. Cooper writes, "Later exploitation of alien technology by the United States and the Soviet Union, utilizing time travel in a project named Rainbow, confirmed the prophecy." Many dismissed Mr. Cooper as erratic and paranoid because as far back as the 90s, he claimed that time travel was possible, that it was introduced to the US officials by aliens, and that they have been able to use it. The final key from Erica's testimony was what Cleo told her regarding Christians and Elohim. He said that Christians serve Elohim, that they belong to the kingdom of the same one that they claim destroyed their earth. This is a massive piece of insight to a believer, to know that yes, these beings have dark ulterior motives against humanity, but especially against believers whom they say serve the same one who left them homeless. It would be wise to understand that when they reveal themselves, they will have a personal vendetta against believers. Spirit is fought with spirit. We know by their own admission that they serve the dark side. They may show up pretending to be above religion, to be more practical and scientific, but all pointers show that they are spiritual beings who, again by their own admission, use magic, witchcraft, occult practices to operate. They are advanced in their thinking, and this makes them expert manipulators, especially against limited human mind frames. In all my research, I have not found anywhere where they mentioned any other god except Elohim of the Bible and his Christ. The point of knowing all this has nothing to do with entertainment, neither is it a waste of our time. With knowledge, fear significantly reduces. When you are aware of what you're dealing with, you're more likely to be level-headed while facing the challenge and to make the best possible decision in the given circumstances. This greatly helps because the one type of energy these creatures feed on is fear. With knowledge too, You know how to pray. You pray in confidence, with understanding and not in a state of panic, extreme terror, and fear. Seeking Yah in trauma and distress tends to scatter our prayers. But now, when there's still peace and a semblance of normalcy outside, is the ripe time to become acquainted with what comes next and to pray into the future, no matter how unfathomable it appears. When you do so, you're able to structure your prayers with fervency, wisdom, and conviction that exactly what you ask for will be given you because you have prayed accurately. Obviously, we are not to take everything hook, line, and sinker. We should always take everything in strides, in wisdom and discernment. For instance, I found claims that John Lear was a government agent, and I found this claim to be feasible. Unlike all the other conspirators who ended up dead or completely banished from normal life, he appeared to be quite comfortable, though he said some pretty outlandish things. The goal of these deceivers is that we remain deceived no matter what. They are very capable of forming false opposition teams, whose function is to give us half-truths as long as they get to shape the narrative of what we learn and what we get to believe. This is how I've always felt about quote-unquote conservative public figures such as Candace Owens and Harrison Butker. What I did in gathering this information is, I would check whether what was claimed was backed by testimonies of real-life people or those who at least suffered for revealing these things. Again, the goal of knowing these things is really about arming ourselves with information, because the coming world is surely a world we will be unable to recognize. It will look nothing like what we have now. Milton Cooper wrote, "I believe therefore that a grand scheme of chess is being played on a level that we can barely imagine, and we are the pawns. Pawns are valuable under certain circumstances and are frequently sacrificed to gain an advantage. Knowing these matters, that is, where we are headed, what to expect, how to combat it, could be the difference between one who survives and one who doesn't, who caves in and who is prepared and therefore unintimidated. I have read reports of military men who died immediately of heart attacks upon seeing these aliens in motion conversing with their superiors. Those who may not know of them may consent to and even believe what the government says about them, which is a sure way to die. When people start missing and show up with these particular missing parts, those without understanding may believe the government when it claims that it's wild animals or psychopaths or other such lies, which puts even more people in danger, because if they do not know the truth of a situation, then how will they handle it? I have noticed a peculiarity in how the Holy Father deals with me. Once he begins to caution me or lead me in a certain direction regarding a matter, it is usually a sign that the matter is at hand, even at the door. I have paid dearly in terms of my spiritual growth and understanding for not listening and heeding to the warnings he would send me, because before I knew it, the matter would unfold right before my eyes. This time, when the Father led me to look into aliens, I did not hesitate. I began to do my research as he led me and was surprised to find stark, clear evidence of everything we've been warned of, dating as far back as the 30s. I say this emphatically. UFOs and aliens are at hand. Take precaution. Move with wisdom. Do not neglect praying for safety. Seek Yah diligently. These are satanic hybrids, expert deceivers without mercy for humanity, especially if the human is a believer. I'll leave you with this. The world is changing whether we like it or not. Many who remain in unbelief will be victims by their own choice and will unnecessarily die. To cling to the past is guaranteed suicide. To remain apathetic is assured enslavement. To learn the truth and act accordingly is our only hope, and will be the difference between who makes it and who doesn't. Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves.
Receiving news that a badly mutilated body of a woman was today found dumped next to Con Heights along Naivasha Road in Nairobi. It is said that her chest and abdomen were ripped apart and some of her internal organs were missing.